wondered what truly propels individuals to power? Or, what unseen forces guide their astonishing rise and sometimes their equally spectacular fall? What if there was a playbook, a set of hidden rules for this timeless game?
Well, today we're embarking on a comprehensive deep dive into Robert Greene's incredibly controversial and, frankly, undeniably compelling book, The 48 Laws of Power. And this isn't just about skimming a book, right? It's about dissecting a philosophy that has fascinated and often, let's be honest, repelled readers for decades.
You got it. Our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack each of the 48 laws. We want to understand their core meaning and truly delve into the fascinating, sometimes, shocking backstories and historical examples that bring them to life. We're drawing heavily from a comprehensive guide titled Mastering Power, an in-depth guide to Greene's laws, and also directly from the 48 Laws of Power itself. So consider this your fast track to being thoroughly informed about this, profoundly influential work. We'll explore its central philosophy and the historical context Greene uses to support his often counterintuitive principles.
Right. And at its heart, Greene's work posits that power is this omnipresent social game. It's constantly being played, whether we're aware of it or not, by basically everyone around us. And it's a game governed by timeless rules, principles drawn from the cunning and strategies of, courtiers, generals, leaders throughout human history.
So it's not just some dusty academic treatise, is it?
Not at all.
The book aims to expose these rules, not necessarily to endorse them as morally good or right, but more to assert that ignoring these deep-seated human dynamics leaves you incredibly vulnerable. It's a call for pragmatism, really, over conventional morality, emphasizing survival and influence in a world where, let's face it, niceties are often just a facade. Imagine it as understanding how to effectively wield an iron hand, even if it's hidden inside, a velvet glove.
Exactly. And the book isn't organized into neat, obvious thematic sections either. Instead, it reveals these underlying principles that permeate various human interactions, things like self-preservation, reputation management, the art of deception, subtle control. It really covers a lot. It fundamentally challenges conventional views on leadership and social influence, often diverging sharply from typical notions of what constitutes good or ethical behavior. It even suggests that those who loudly proclaim their moral qualities, the ones who say they're non-players, are often the most skilled at indirect manipulation, even if they practice it, unconsciously.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly. So let's get straight into it. We're going to walk through all 48 laws one by one. We'll explain what each one truly means and give you those rich backstories, the anecdotes, and the deeper insights from the source material that really bring these principles to life.
All right, let's begin our journey through the laws.
First up, we have Law 1, Never Outshine the Master. The core idea here seems, deceptively simple. Always ensure those above you feel comfortably superior. In your eagerness to impress, you've got to be incredibly careful not to display your talents too overtly, or you risk inspiring fear and insecurity. The shrewd path to power, according to Greene, is actually to make your masters appear more brilliant than they actually are.
Right. And we see this principle demonstrated beautifully in history, with figures like Galileo. When he discovered Jupiter's moons, a monumental scientific achievement, he didn't use it to flaunt his own genius and overshadow his patron, Cosimo II de' Medici. No, instead, he strategically dedicated the discovery to the Medicis. He even commissioned an emblem representing Jupiter with 4 circling stars, symbolizing Cosimo II's link to the stars. This clever flattery secured his position as official court philosopher and mathematician, which was a huge coup for a scientist back then. He made his master appear more brilliant, and by doing that, attained great power himself.
But the flip side of this law can be brutal, can't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Take Senno Rikyu, the premier artist of the tea ceremony in late 16th century Japan. He was a favorite of the powerful Emperor Hideyoshi, had his own apartment in the palace, honored throughout Japan. Yet he took his favored status for granted. He dared to subtly outshine Hideyoshi, showing an independence that hinted at, maybe, a rival power base. This miscalculation of his own importance led directly to his arrest and forced suicide in 1591. The lesson is chillingly clear. Never take your position for granted or let favors go to your head.
And the source material highlights the subtle art of strategic flattery. If you are more intelligent than your master, you need to appear less so. Act a little naive, perhaps. Make it seem like you desperately need their expertise or assistance, maybe by committing harmless mistakes that don't truly hurt you but require their guidance. Masters absolutely adore such requests. It allows them to bestow the gift of their experience and wisdom, subtly solidifying their own sense of importance rather than directing, rancor and ill will at you for your perceived brilliance.
That's a powerful and often counterintuitive start, isn't it? It suggests the path to power isn't always about flaunting your strengths. And speaking of where to place your trust, Greene takes an even more, well, cynical turn with Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies. This one might seem harsh, but it argues that friends are far more likely to betray you, often due to envy, while enemies can actually be quite useful, offering surprising opportunities.
The story of the Byzantine Emperor Michael III is a really stark lesson here. He ascended to the throne young, inexperienced, surrounded by intriguers. Against all good counsel, he elevated his best friend, Basilius, the head of the royal stables, to chief counselor, purely out of a misguided sense of loyalty. Basilius, quickly consumed by avarice from exposure to court splendor, poured poison into Michael's ear about his uncle, Bardas, the man who'd actually put Michael on the throne. Basilius eventually murdered Bardas, took his powerful position, and then, in a truly chilling twist, he murdered Michael himself. It just highlights the profound ingratitude and danger that can come from those closest to you.
It's a stark warning about where to place your most intimate trust, isn't it?
Definitely.
On the flip side, the source material points to Emperor Sung's ingenious strategy in ancient China. He didn't just execute his rival generals, which would have incited widespread vengeance and rebellion. Instead, he kind of emasculated them through lavish bribes and by keeping them at a distance far from court intrigues and military power. This avoided inciting future conflicts. He also famously avoided friendly ministers, understanding that personal affection could easily turn into resentment or, a false sense of security.
And in some cases, you can even follow Lincoln's philosophy. Destroy an enemy by making them a friend. Henry Kissinger, during the Vietnam War, faced an unsuccessful kidnapping attempt by anti-war activists, including priests and nuns. Instead of involving the Secret Service or escalating things, he privately arranged a meeting with 3 of the alleged kidnappers. By engaging them directly, human to human, he disarmed them and kind of used the situation to his advantage. Yet the source also suggests there are times when it's more effective to use enemies as enemies, keeping them at arm's length.
Right, and here's where it gets really interesting, especially with figures like Mao Zedong. He saw conflict as absolutely key to consolidating power. In 1937, when Japan invaded China, interrupting the ongoing civil war between Mao's communists and the nationalists, some urged a truce, let both sides recuperate. Mao disagreed completely. He argued that fighting the formidable Japanese invaders would be the perfect training for his ragtag communist army, and this decision paid off immensely. By the time the Japanese retreated, the communists had gained invaluable fighting experience, which helped them decisively defeat the nationalists later. It exemplifies this idea of the jaws of ingratitude, knowing how to profit from conflict, even when it seems to unite former enemies against a common foe.
And for a darker application of Law 2, friends can be incredibly useful as scapegoats. Kings historically used what was known as the fall of the favorite trick. They'd sacrifice a close but not too close friend to deflect public blame when plans went awry, or, frankly, dirty work needed to be done. The public just wouldn't believe a king would deliberately sacrifice a true beloved friend, making it a perfect deflection of responsibility.
Okay, moving on to Law 3. Conceal your intentions. The core judgment here is to keep people off balance and in the dark by never revealing the true purpose behind your actions. If they don't know what you're truly up to, they can't possibly prepare a defense, right? Guide them far enough down the wrong path, envelop them in enough smoke, and by the time they realize your intentions, it'll be far too late to react.
The source material offers a fascinating anecdote about Ninon de Lenclos's intricate seduction tactics. She advised a marquis who wanted to seduce a countess to first feign complete nonchalance and friendship, a really clever red herring. Then, to make her jealous, he was to appear publicly with other beautiful women. This made him seem desirable and significantly increased her intrigue. Finally, unpredictable appearances and disappearances created emotional confusion, which Ninon considered an absolute prerequisite for seduction. It was a, multi-week campaign of perfectly concealed, shifting intentions.
And you see this play out in high-stakes politics, too. Bismarck, in 1850, right at the height of war fever against Austria, gave this surprising public speech praising Austria and condemning war, astonishing everyone. He did this because the Prussian military was completely unready for a fight, and a lost war would jeopardize his entire career. This completely threw people off his true intention, which was strengthening Prussia for a future war. It earned him a cabinet minister's position from the grateful king, and ultimately paved the way for his rise to premier and the eventual humiliation of Austria.
Joseph Weil, a master con artist, absolutely perfected this law. He visited a retired businessman, a Mr. Giesel, feigning interest in buying an apartment. Then he appeared incredibly reluctant to reveal a big deal he was supposedly working on, requiring a large sum of cash. Giesel, naturally persistent, eventually pressed Weil to reveal a staged boxing fix scenario. Weil's feigned honesty about his need for cash and the uncle's staged anger tricked Giesel into investing his own money. Weil's initial reluctance was just a potent decoy, leading Giesel down a path of his own choosing straight into the con.
The source material really stresses the power of using smoke screens. A bland, familiar exterior, like an unreadable poker face, can perfectly hide your true intentions. Think of the British civil servants spying for the Soviets in the Cold War. They went undetected for years precisely because they blended seamlessly into the old boy network. It's about not appearing secretive, but instead talking endlessly about desires and goals, just not your real ones. Even P.T. Barnum, later in life, ironically embraced his reputation as a humbug, publicly revealing his deceptions in an autobiography because he understood that the world wants to be deceived. And of course, conspicuous diversions, like those Charlton Mampium with their elaborate black coaches and star entertainers, would distract the public from their real purpose, selling ineffective elixirs.
That leads us directly to Law 4. Always say less than necessary. The judgment here is that when you try to impress people with words, the more you say, the more common you appear and the less in control you become. Even incredibly banal statements can seem profound if they're vague and, sphinx-like. Powerful people impress and intimidate by saying less because the more you talk, the more likely you are to say something foolish or worse, reveal your hand.
Consider Louis XIV, the Sun King. He maintained absolute control over his courtiers by making them constantly seek his advice, yet he would usually reply with a vague, non-committal, "I shall see." His silence, especially in formal settings like the council, projected ultimate control, forcing courtiers to constantly orbit him and interpret his every nuance. It was subtle, yeah, but incredibly effective in asserting dominance.
In stark contrast, Coriolanus, the Roman general, illustrates the catastrophic downfall of saying too much. His direct, angry condemnations of democracy and the people's tribunes in public speeches inflamed public opinion. It ultimately led to his defeat in elections and his eventual banishment from Rome. His open criticism backfired catastrophically, showing how word unmeasured can ignite widespread resentment.
This law also brilliantly highlights the power of demonstration over explanation. Sir Christopher Wren, the brilliant English architect, was often asked by patrons to make impractical changes to his designs. When the mayor of Westminster, for instance, demanded 2 utterly useless stone columns for the town hall, Wren, knowing they were unnecessary, simply added them, without argument. His silent compliance proved his point. The columns indeed served no purpose without generating resentment or engaging in a futile debate. It's the ultimate demonstrate, do not explicate.
And the vizier, who was sentenced to death by his sultan, beautifully exemplified this. Instead of arguing his loyalty, he asked for 10 days' respite, which he used diligently to feed the sultan's fierce hunting dogs. When he was finally thrown to them, the dogs defended him, proving his loyalty through concrete action, not words. This contrasts sharply with Consul Mucianus, who, irritated by an engineer endlessly arguing for a smaller mast during a siege, had the man flogged to death. Sometimes, silence is really the only appropriate response to impudence.
And for a strategic twist, the source notes that verbal argument has one vital, albeit cynical, use: to distract and cover your tracks when practicing deception or caught in a lie. Count Victor Lustig, that master con artist, used technical gobbledygook to overwhelm a sheriff who suspected him of passing counterfeit notes. This created confusion, distracting the sheriff from the truth and allowing Lustig to escape charges. He used words to create a smokescreen.
Fascinating how these laws often intertwine, isn't it? From concealing intentions to saying less, it's all about controlling perception. And tied very closely to that is Law 5. So much depends on reputation, guard it with your life. This law states that reputation is the cornerstone of power. Through reputation alone, you can intimidate and win. Once it slips, you are incredibly vulnerable. You must make your reputation unassailable, thwart potential attacks, and learn to destroy enemies by opening holes in their reputations, then stepping aside and letting public opinion do the rest.
P.T. Barnum, the legendary master of humbuggery, understood this perfectly in his rivalry with Peale's museum. Barnum actively spread rumors about Peel's financial instability, sowing seeds of doubt about their solvency. When Peel's tried to recover with highbrow entertainment, including mesmerism, Barnum staged a fake mesmeric performance, offering to dramatically cut off a girl's finger to prove her trance was real. This made Peel's look utterly ridiculous and effectively ruined their reputation by associating them with similar but clearly fraudulent acts. Doubt and ridicule, once unleashed, are incredibly hard to fight.
That's a chilling demonstration of how quickly reputation can be shattered. Which leads us to Law 6, court attention at all cost. The judgment here is that everything is judged by its appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing. Never allow yourself to get lost in the crowd or buried in oblivion. Stand out. Be conspicuous at all costs. Make yourself a magnet of attention by appearing lighter, more colorful, and more mysterious than the bland and timid masses. Notoriety of any sort will bring you power. Better to be slandered and attacked than ignored.
An ancient Indian fable captures this principle perfectly. A wasp, desiring fame, stung a prince repeatedly to create an uproar throughout the city, knowing a name without fame is like fire without flame. The whole city was in an uproar, business suspended, all attention on the wasp's audacious act. This illustrates the principle of attracting notice at any cost, even if it's negative attention.
And you see this in historical figures who understood visual impact. Dinocrates, appearing as the naked Hercules before Alexander the Great, and Gossart, in that fantastic, almost theatrical paper costume before Emperor Charles V. These weren't just bizarre acts, they were audacious, mythical statements. By appearing as the naked Hercules, Dinocrates was making a grand, almost divine claim about his own power and Alexander's potential patronage. It was a visual shock that demanded immediate attention and framed his ambition as something larger than life. A powerful first impression.
And here's where it really highlights a strategic mind at work. The rivalry between Edison and Tesla. Edison, a showman at heart, constantly designed visually dazzling experiments. He talked of fantastic future inventions like robots or machines that could photograph thought, even if he had no real intention of pursuing them. This ensured he received far more public attention and funding than Nikola Tesla. Tesla was perhaps more scientifically brilliant, but far less known for self-promotion. Edison even notoriously refused to share a Nobel Prize with Tesla, fearing the attention it would bring his rival.
Right. And once in the limelight, you must constantly renew that attention. Pablo Picasso never allowed himself to fade into the background. If his name became too attached to a particular style, he would deliberately upset the public with new series of paintings that went against all expectations. He believed it was better to create something ugly and disturbing than to let viewers grow too familiar and predictable with his work. This ensures you maintain control and respect by consistently playing against and shaping public expectations.
The power of cultivated mystery is also a potent tool. Mata Hari, an otherwise average woman from Holland, created a cult-like following as a sacred Indian dancer simply by cultivating an air of deep mystery and exoticism. It led to immense fame and independence, before, of course, being exposed as a German spy. Count Victor Lustig, the con artist, cultivated an air of mystery, a Rolls-Royce, a Japanese chauffeur, brief, enigmatic conversations that made him seem like a mysterious aristocrat, drawing people in and distracting them from his actual cons.
Mao Zedong also brilliantly cultivated an enigmatic image. He had no worries about seeming inconsistent or contradicting himself. The very contradictoriness of his actions and words meant he always had the upper hand. No one, not even his own wife, ever truly felt they understood him, which made him seem larger than life and ensured constant public attention. His unpredictability was part of his mystique.
And for a literal demonstration of courting attention, think of Hannibal's fire trick. To escape a marshland during a military maneuver, he ordered bundles of burning twigs tied to oxen horns, sending them up a mountain at night. Roman sentries, seeing mysterious moving fires and hearing strange noises, fled in panic, believing it was demons or a vast unknown army. He used pure spectacle to control the battlefield without engaging in direct combat.
All right, let's turn our attention to Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always takes the credit. This law advises you to appear of godlike strength and capability by having others do the often tedious or difficult work while you strategically take all the credit. Find people with skills you lack, put your name on their hard-won work, or take their work and cleverly make it your own.
An ancient tortoise fable perfectly illustrates this principle. The tortoise, though small, tricked an elephant and a hippopotamus into a tug of war, making them believe he was equally strong. He simply connected their ropes across a river and let them pull against each other while he sat in the middle, taking all the credit for their immense struggle. The clear lesson here: never do what others can do for you.
This law serves as a stark warning for the ambitious and, well, a cynical lesson for those seeking credit. Vasco Núñez de Balboa, the discoverer of the Pacific, sent jewels and gold back to Spain, asking for an army to conquer the fabled El Dorado. However, he failed to keep his knowledge of the Incas' location secret. His lack of foresight allowed Pedrarias, a rival, to arrive, take over his conquest, and eventually execute Balboa. Balboa did the pioneering work. Others took the ultimate prize and the credit.
We see similar dynamic with Nikola Tesla, the brilliant inventor. He developed the alternating current AC electrical system, which powers modern society. But George Westinghouse, who funded him and commercialized the technology, became more broadly associated with the invention in the public eye, ultimately obscuring Tesla's name and contributions.
Filippo Brunelleschi, the Renaissance architect, brilliantly applied this law to ensure he got sole credit for the monumental Florence Cathedral dome. When the city hired Lorenzo Ghiberti to share credit for the project, Brunelleschi feigned a mysterious illness, withdrawing from the work. Ghiberti, lacking Brunelleschi's vision and skill, quickly proved useless, forcing officials to beg Brunelleschi to return. This ensured he got sole credit. The source describes it using a powerful analogy of a vulture. The hard work of others becomes his work. Their failure to survive becomes his nourishment.
Next up, Law 8. Make other people come to you, use bait if necessary. The judgment here is that when you force the other person to act, you are the one in control. It's almost always better to make your opponent abandon their own plans and come to you on your terms. Lure them with the promise of fabulous gains or benefits, then, once they've committed and closed in, attack. You will hold all the cards.
Haile Selassie demonstrated this masterfully against his defiant subordinate, Dejazmak Balcha. Balcha arrived near the capital with 10,000 men, expecting Selassie to come to him for a showdown. Selassie, predicting this, used the waiting time to disarm Balcha's main army while he was immobile, then blocked his escape routes. He had effectively checkmated Balcha and forced his surrender without directly confronting his formidable force. Balcha was forced to come to him on Selassie's terms.
This echoes Brunelleschi's earlier move, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
His feigned illness, as we discussed with Law 7, also effectively made the city officials come begging to him, establishing a pattern where they continued to seek him out even after he stopped actively trying.
And Daniel Drew, the notorious 19th century robber baron, used this in the cutthroat world of the stock market. He would accidentally drop a slip of paper with a fake stock tip near Wall Street, knowing ambitious club members would pounce on it. This lured them to act on his false information, allowing him to manipulate the market to his immense advantage, all while appearing to be simply careless.
The key here seems to be understanding timing and relative strength. If time is on your side and your strengths are at least equal to your opponent's, you can deplete your enemies by making them come to you, exhausting their resources and will. But if time is against you and your enemies are currently weaker, waiting will only give them a chance to recover. In that specific case, you must strike quickly, giving them nowhere to go and no time to react.
And that strategic patience ties directly into our next law. Law 9. Win through your actions, never through argument. Any momentary triumph you think you've gained through verbal argument is actually a Pyrrhic victory. The resentment and ill will you stir up are far stronger and last far longer than any fleeting change of opinion. It is much more powerful to get others to agree with you through your actions without saying a word. Demonstrate, don't explicate.
We've already touched on the vizier who was sentenced to death by a sultan. Instead of arguing his innocence or loyalty, he used his 10-day reprieve to diligently feed the sultan's fierce hunting dogs. When he was finally thrown to them in the arena, the dogs defended him fiercely, proving his loyalty through an undeniable action. This is the ultimate demonstrate, don't explicate.
Right. The disastrous outcome of arguing is also seen with Consul Mucianus, who, angered by an engineer endlessly arguing for a smaller mass during a siege, lost his patience and had the man flogged to death. His words, his insolence, led directly to his demise.
And back to Sir Christopher Wren, who, when asked to add 2 useless columns to the Westminster Town Hall, simply added them without argument. His action, the visible uselessness of the columns, silently proved his point without generating resentment or direct conflict with the mayor. The physical evidence spoke louder than any words could.
The source uses the vivid image of a seesaw, suggesting that arguers simply go up and down, getting nowhere fast. It advises, get off the seesaw and show them your meaning without kicking or pushing. Actions speak with a finality that words rarely possess.
Now, for a clever reversal of this law, verbal argument can be used to distract and cunningly cover your tracks when practicing deception or caught in a lie. Count Victor Lustig, that master con artist, again comes to mind. When a sheriff suspected him of passing counterfeit notes, Lustig launched into an incomprehensible torrent of technical gobbledygook about his money-making machine. He overwhelmed the sheriff and created enough confusion to escape without charges. He used words to create a dense smokescreen, not to prove a point, but to evade capture.
Okay, now on to Law 10, infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. Misfortune, the law asserts, is highly contagious. You should actively associate with the happy and the fortunate, and conversely, rigorously avoid those who tend to draw unhappiness upon themselves, for their intensity of character and emotion can be particularly infectious, dragging you down with them.
Lola Montez, the notorious 19th century courtesan, is a prime example of an infector. Her affair with King Ludwig of Bavaria led directly to his abdication. Later, her marriage to George Trafford Heald, a promising young army officer, led to his financial ruin, social ostracization, and early death in a boating accident. She was a clear infector of misfortune, dragging down those around her without seeming to suffer herself.
The source explains that humans are incredibly susceptible to the moods, emotions, and even ways of thinking of those they spend time with. The incurably unhappy and unstable have intense infecting power and often present themselves as victims, making it difficult to see their miseries as self-inflicted until it's far too late and you've been thoroughly infected by their negativity.
But the reverse is also profoundly true. Positive qualities can affect others just as powerfully. Talleyrand, despite his strange physical traits, radiated graciousness, aristocratic charm, and profound wit. This contrasted sharply with Napoleon, who, despite his genius, was often taciturn and prone to violent outbursts. The source suggests you should actively associate with those who radiate happiness, energy, and positive qualities to share in the prosperity they draw upon themselves.
Next up, Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. The ultimate power, according to this law, is to get people to do as you wish willingly. Not through coercion, but by making them absolutely dependent on your unique services, skills, or influence. If you create no essential need for yourself, you will be done away with at the very first convenient opportunity.
This law is beautifully illustrated by the quick-witted astrologer of Louis XI. Threatened with execution by the king, the astrologer declared, "I shall die just 3 days before your majesty." This bold, superstitious declaration made the superstitious king utterly dependent on him, believing his own life was directly tied to the astrologer's. The king spared his life, lavished him with gifts, and had him tended by the finest doctors, all to avoid tempting fate. The astrologer famously survived Louis by several years, proving his mastery of power, not prophecy.
Ivan the Terrible, facing defiance from his boyars, temporarily abandoned the throne in 1564, withdrawing to a distant monastery. This act of strategic absence forced his subjects to call him back, but he only agreed on the condition of absolute unchecked power. He later abdicated again, further entrenching himself as indispensable. He created a situation where the chaos of his absence was far more terrifying than the terror of his presence, ensuring his continued dependence.
Even in the cutthroat world of Hollywood, you see this principle. Harry Cohn, a notoriously tyrannical studio head at Columbia Pictures, hated his screenwriter Lawson but kept him on staff despite their mutual animosity. Why? Because Lawson was Humphrey Bogart's preferred writer, and Bogart was Columbia's biggest, most profitable star. This chain of dependence made Lawson untouchable. Messing with him would ruin an immensely profitable relationship for Cohn.
Henry Kissinger, too, survived countless political purges and infighting in the Nixon White House. Not necessarily because he was the best diplomat or got along best with Nixon, but because he had strategically entrenched himself in so many crucial areas of the political structure. His removal would have led to utter chaos and dysfunction. His power was extensive, covering many domains, not just intensive like, say, Michelangelo's singular artistic skill.
Machiavelli famously asserted that it's better to be feared than loved. This law echoes that sentiment. Dependence out of fear of consequences and the need for your specific essential skills is often far more secure than dependence based on fragile love or changeable friendship.
Now for Law 12. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. This law advises that a single, well-timed act of honesty or generosity can cunningly cloak numerous deceptions, effectively disarming the most wary and suspicious individuals.
Count Victor Lustig, the master con artist, used this to perfection on Al Capone, no less. Lustig approached Capone, claiming he could double $50,000. He took the money, put it in a safe deposit box for 60 days, and did absolutely nothing. When Capone, predictably, demanded his money back, Lustig returned it, then tearfully confessed he'd failed and offered $5,000 as a bribe for wasting Capone's time. Capone, immensely impressed by Lustig's apparent honesty and generosity, a rare quality in the criminals he dealt with, then gave Lustig the $5,000 back. Lustig gained both money and, astonishingly, Capone's trust through this elaborate deception.
The classic example of this is, of course, the Trojan horse. The Greeks offered a magnificent wooden horse to Troy, seemingly an irresistible and noble gift, a sign of surrender. But the gift, as we know, hid soldiers, leading to Troy's ultimate downfall. The source notes that one gift did more for the Greek cause than 10 years of fighting. This highlights that honesty and generosity are merely powerful weapons in the arsenal of deception when used strategically.
Now, for a fascinating reversal, if you already have a history of deceit, sudden, overt honesty can actually be highly suspicious. In such cases, it's often better to lean into your rogue reputation. When Count Lustig was about to sell the Eiffel Tower, a massive con in itself, and sensed the industrialist's suspicion, he audaciously admitted that he was, in fact, a con artist. This brazen honesty disarmed the industrialist who, admiring his sheer nerve, still paid him for the imaginary sale.
Up next is Law 13. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. People, the law argues, are fundamentally moved by what benefits them directly. When seeking help or alliances, don't waste time reminding them of past favors you've done for them or appeal to their pity. Instead, uncover something in your request or proposed alliance that will genuinely benefit them and emphasize that gain out of all proportion. They will respond enthusiastically.
The simple fable of the peasant and the barren apple tree perfectly illustrates this profound truth. A peasant decided to cut down a seemingly barren apple tree, ignoring the heartfelt pleas of sparrows and grasshoppers who found shelter in its branches. But when his axe uncovered a hive full of sweet honey within the tree, he instantly deemed the tree sacred and began to care for it devotedly because it now appealed directly to his self-interest. The message is clear. Self-interest, above all else, moves most people.
Yeah, that fable, while simple, taps into a profound truth about human nature. People are fundamentally driven by their own perceived benefit. No matter how much gratitude you believe someone owes you, it almost always pales in comparison to the immediate, tangible promise of direct personal gain in their present moment. It's why effective leaders and manipulators frame every request as a mutual opportunity, showing the other party exactly what's in it for them.
Okay, now, Law 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. This law teaches you to probe indirectly to gather crucial information about people's true weaknesses, intentions, and vulnerabilities. There is, it asserts, no social occasion that is not an opportunity for artful spying.
Joseph Duveen, the renowned 20th century art dealer to the super-rich, was a master spy. He secretly put household staff of millionaires on his payroll to gain constant, intimate access to information about their tastes, their movements, their financial habits, their deepest desires. This inside knowledge made him seem clairvoyant and charming. He could anticipate clients' desires and present them with the perfect art piece before they even articulated their need, all without revealing his methods. Other dealers found him everywhere, knowing everything before them, which disheartened and ultimately defeated them.
Talleyrand, as France's foreign minister in the early 19th century, rarely spoke his own ideas in conversation during diplomatic gatherings. Instead, he would organize friendly games of charades or casually blurt out made-up secrets, like a rumor about the Tsar arresting a general. He did this to observe reactions and gather intelligence from foreign diplomats. He would, as the source puts it, fire a pistol into the air to see who will jump out the window, learning who reacted and how, thereby identifying vulnerabilities and alliances.
King Chosroes of Persia used a similar psychological method as a loyalty test for his inner circle. He would tell a seemingly vital secret to one courtier and then meticulously observe the behavior of a second courtier who would supposedly be affected by the secret. If the second courtier's behavior didn't change at all, the first had kept the secret. If it did, the secret was out, and both faced severe consequences. It was a subtle yet powerful way to gauge trustworthiness and discretion.
Next, Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. All great leaders since Moses, the law claims, have known that a feared enemy must be crushed completely. If even one ember is left alight, no matter how dimly it smolders, a fire will eventually break out. More is lost through stopping halfway than through total annihilation. The enemy will recover, become more embittered, and inevitably seek revenge. Crush them, not only in body, but crucially in spirit.
The story of Xiang Yu and Liu Pang from ancient China exemplifies this brutal truth. Xiang Yu, a ruthless and powerful leader, repeatedly had his rival, Liu Pang, in his grasp, but hesitated, either out of respect or maybe a fatal sympathy. Liu Pang, cunningly making a false treaty to lull Xiang into a false sense of security, then launched a surprise attack and slaughtered Xiang's army. Xiang, utterly defeated and disgraced, committed suicide. His mercy and hesitation were his undoing.
Empress Wu of China's ascent in the 7th century is a chilling illustration of this law. As a concubine, she systematically eliminated every single rival, including the empress and even her own children. She crushed all palace coups with absolute ruthlessness. By ensuring no one was left alive to challenge her, she became the de facto emperor of China, ruling unchallenged for over a decade. She understood that leaving enemies alive was simply an unacceptable risk.
Right. The Spanish general Ramon Maria Narvaez famously epitomized this law when, on his deathbed, asked if he forgave his enemies, he replied, "I do not have to forgive my enemies. I have had them all shot." It's chilling, but a direct application of the principle. This is also a key strategic tenet from Sun Tzu's The Art of War. The idea is simple. Your enemies wish you ill. If you stop halfway out of mercy or the hope of reconciliation, they will only become more determined and embittered and will someday exact their revenge. They may act friendly for now, but they are only biding their time.
These laws certainly paint a stark picture of human nature, don't they? And as we consider the importance of presence and absence, let's explore Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Scarcity increases value. Omnipresence lessens it. This law suggests you should withdraw at the peak of your power or after a significant achievement to leave a lasting impression and prevent people from taking you for granted.
The troubadour Sir Guillaume tried this with Lady Guillaume. He feigned anger and absence from his lady, expecting her to pursue him more passionately. But her unexpected forwardness and eagerness actually made him feel she had lost dignity. This shows the unpredictability of absence if it's not timed perfectly, or if it gives too much initiative to the other side, potentially backfiring.
Conversely, Despise, an arbitrator in an ancient land plagued by corrupt judges, gained immense power by initially being fair and readily available. Then, once his reputation was established, he subtly withdrew, making himself scarce. People had to come to him, making him the sole arbiter of justice in the land. It illustrates how absence, when strategically applied, can create indispensable value and demand.
Napoleon himself keenly observed, "If I am often seen at the theater, people will cease to notice me." In today's world, inundated with constant presence through social media and ubiquitous images, the game of strategic withdrawal is even more powerful. We are inherently awed by anyone who is able to disappear by choice, like J.D. Salinger or Greta Garbo. They command a certain mystique simply through their absence.
The law of scarcity in economics perfectly mirrors this principle. In 17th century Holland, making tulips scarce dramatically increased their value, sparking the famous tulipomania. Art dealer Joseph Duveen, a master of the market, would strategically store entire collections for years to keep prices elevated and create an artificial scarcity.
Charles V, at the height of his immense power in the 16th century, famously retired to a monastery, captivating Europe and earning saint-like admiration simply by withdrawing from the world. Greta Garbo, too, retired from acting in her mid-30s, wisely choosing to leave the stage on her own terms rather than waiting for audiences or critics to tire of her.
The crucial point, though, is the timing of this withdrawal. In the beginning of your ascent, you must make yourself not scarce but omnipresent, a constant fixture. Only what is seen, appreciated, and loved will be genuinely missed and valued in its absence.
That perfectly sets up Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Humans are inherently creatures of habit with an insatiable need for familiarity and predictability. Your predictability gives them a sense of control and comfort. Turn the tables by being deliberately inconsistent and unpredictable. Keep people constantly off balance, which can intimidate and even terrorize them into submission. Bobby Fischer, the eccentric chess master, famously used this in his 1972 match against Boris Spassky. Fischer employed unorthodox, unpredictable tactics that completely unnerved Spassky, forcing him into blunders. Spassky eventually came to believe Fischer was hypnotizing him simply because his moves defied any logical, predictable pattern. Hannibal's ingenious escape from the marshland, which we mentioned earlier, is another brilliant example. By tying bundles of burning twigs to oxen horns and sending them up a mountain at night, he created the illusion of a vast, mysterious, and utterly unpredictable force. It terrified the Roman sentries into fleeing in panic. This completely unpredictable spectacle allowed him to escape an impossible situation.
Animals, by their very nature, tend to behave in set patterns. Only humans can consciously and deliberately alter their behavior. Most men, the source argues, don't realize this profound power and instead prefer the comforting routine of predictability. But the powerful deliberately unsettle. You sometimes need to strike without warning, making others tremble and react when they least expect it, keeping them in a constant state of anticipatory fear.
Now, for a tactical reversal, sometimes predictability can work powerfully in your favor by effectively lulling opponents to sleep. Muhammad Ali, before his iconic 1974 Rumble in the Jungle fight with George Foreman, loudly announced he would punch it out. His trainer even visibly loosened the ring ropes. Everyone, including Foreman, believed it was a cunning ploy to deceive them. But Ali used this feigned predictability to surprise Foreman by actually slugging it out, forcing Foreman to come to him and ultimately winning the fight. He used a predictable facade to conceal a truly unpredictable strategy.
From the dangers of predictability, we move to the perils of withdrawal with Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. Isolation, the law asserts, cuts you off from vital information, makes you lose objective perspective, and renders you an easy, static target for attack. Power, the law, fundamentally depends on constant social interaction and the free circulation of knowledge and influence.
Edgar Allan Poe's chilling short story, The Mask of the Red Death, perfectly illustrates this. Prince Prospero retreats into a secluded fortified abbey to escape the pestilence raging outside. His isolation, however, makes him lose touch with reality, fostering a false sense of security, and ultimately death infiltrates and claims him anyway, despite his elaborate defenses.
In Renaissance Italy, the melancholic painter Pontormo isolated himself for 11 years in a chapel to work on frescoes. He developed a phobia for human contact and feared his ideas would be stolen. His unfinished frescoes, as described by his contemporary Vari, lacked proportion and cohesion, becoming his undoing and ruining his career. This symbolizes the profound dangers of artistic and social isolation for creativity and impact.
The contrast is Louis XIV of Versailles.
Right.
Louis deliberately placed himself at the absolute center of everything. There was no true privacy, every room communicated with another, and he was constantly attended. He was aware of everything, making him incredibly powerful, as all activity and information revolved around him. He made himself the hub, not an isolated spoke.
The source material powerfully underlines that in warfare and strategy games, isolation almost always precedes defeat and death. Leaders who retreat into small, isolated circles become paranoid, lose maneuverability, and ultimately become easy targets for those who remain connected and informed.
That's a crucial point. Connection is power. And understanding those connections and the people within them is key for Law 19. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. This law emphasizes the critical importance of recognizing different types of people and rigorously avoiding those who are too dangerous to offend or manipulate. Some individuals, when wronged, possess the capacity and will to utterly ruin you.
Genghis Khan initially desired only peaceful trade relations with Shah Muhammad of the Khwarezmian Empire. Khan sent caravans and embassies, but Muhammad, out of sheer arrogance and misjudgment, seized the caravan and executed one ambassador, then beheaded another from a subsequent mission. This complete, repeated disregard for Khan's nature and status sparked a devastating Mongol invasion that utterly destroyed Muhammad's empire, leaving it a wasteland. He offended the absolute wrong person, failing to comprehend the depth of Khan's ruthlessness.
Bill Norfleet, an American who was brutally conned by outlaws in the late 19th century, exemplifies the unbreakable enemy. He spent 5 years and his entire fortune relentlessly hunting down the entire ring of con artists across the country. He bankrupted himself but ensured they were all put behind bars. He became an unforgiving, relentless force, showing how dangerous certain types of people can be when wronged, no matter the cost to themselves.
The source identifies specific dangerous types to vigilantly avoid. There's the hopelessly insecure man, whose fragile ego simmers with hurt and attacks subtly, often from unexpected angles. Then there's Mr. Suspicion, who sees the worst in everyone and imagines everyone is after him. He can be easily deceived into turning against others, but becomes incredibly dangerous if you ever become his target. And finally, the serpent with a long memory who shows no outward anger, waits patiently, then exacts cold-blooded revenge years later.
This law, the source explicitly states, has no reversal. Ignorance about people always comes at an incredibly high price. You must learn to tell the lions from the lambs and the poisonous snakes from the harmless garden variety, or you will inevitably pay the ultimate price.
All right, next, Law 20. Do not commit to anyone. It's the fool, the law advises, who always rushes to take sides in a conflict. This law counsels against committing yourself to any side or cause but your own. By maintaining your absolute independence, you position yourself to become the master of others, playing people against one another and cleverly making them pursue you rather than you pursuing them.
Alcibiades, the brilliant but notoriously mercurial Greek statesman, played this game to perfection. He constantly shifted loyalties between Athens, Sparta, and Persia, making promises to every side but committing to none of them fully. This unwavering independence made him continually courted and sought after by all parties, allowing him to always hold all the crucial cards, leveraging one against the other.
Contrast that with Pope Julius II's deep, passionate commitment to the costly siege of Ferrara. The Pope exhausted himself, both physically and financially, leading directly to his death a few months later, and the swift resumption of endless conflicts among various factions. Avoiding such deep, consuming commitment allows you to avoid becoming a tool in other struggles, preserving your own energy and resources.
An ancient Chinese saying brilliantly illustrates this. When the snipe in the mussel struggle, the fisherman gets the benefit. This teaches that when others are locked in conflict, you grow stronger by wisely avoiding involvement. You retain your initiative, your resources, and your freedom to act when the time is right.
Now, for a strategic reversal, sometimes asserting independence is absolutely crucial for gaining genuine respect. George Washington, as the first president, wisely avoided rushing into alliances with either France or England, despite immense political pressure. He understood that the young American Republic needed to earn the world's respect through its autonomy and self-reliance, knowing that true long-term power lay in not being beholden to any foreign power.
Moving on to Law 21. Play a sucker. To catch a sucker, appear dumber than your mark. This law suggests that you can disarm suspicion by subtly making people feel they are vastly more intelligent or sophisticated than you. This allows you to manipulate them unseen as they underestimate your true capabilities.
The audacious duo of Arnold and Slack, two prospectors from the 19th century, exemplified this with their fake diamond mine scam. They appeared as incredibly naive rubes or hayseeds to some of the richest men in the world and leading gem experts, including Tiffany & Co. This carefully cultivated naivete utterly disarmed all suspicion, allowing them to fool everyone into believing in a fake diamond mine. They simply salted a mine with real gems they had bought in Europe, letting the experts discover them and convince themselves.
Bismarck, already known for his aggression and cunning, used this tactic during treaty negotiations with the unsuspecting Austrian diplomat Blum. Bismarck pretended to be a heedless fool, prone to blunders. Blum, overly confident in his own intelligence and perceiving Bismarck as clumsy, only glanced superficially at the treaty, missing the crucial fine print Bismarck had slyly inserted, leading directly to Austria's long-term disadvantage. The Chinese have a poignant phrase for this: masquerading as a swine to kill the tiger, where the hunter disguises himself as a pig to get close to the tiger, who expects an easy meal only to be ambushed.
History is full of examples of powerful figures who effectively played the fool in their youth to survive. Claudius, before becoming Roman emperor, and the future Louis XIII of France both played the fool as young men. They did it to avoid suspicion from those above them who might have seen them as ambitious rivals. They struck with vigor only when the time was right, catching everyone completely off guard.
For a strategic reversal, occasionally, a bold display of intelligence can actually cover deception. The art dealer Joseph Duveen confidently dismissed a young critic's doubt about the authenticity of a Dürer painting. He calmly told the critic that many renowned experts had made the same mistake in the past, subtly implying the critic was in good but ultimately wrong company. This authoritative dismissal intimidated the critic into apologizing, reinforcing Duveen's expertise and authority while masking any underlying doubt about the painting itself.
Okay, now, Law 22. Use the surrender tactic. Transform weakness into power. This means yielding to overwhelming force outwardly, making a show of submission, but inwardly remaining firm and resolute. This neutralizes aggression, buys you crucial time to recover, and allows you to secretly plot a devastating counterattack.
The Melians, in their conflict with the powerful Athenians, famously refused to surrender. They insisted on their honor and independence despite being completely outmatched. This fatal pride led directly to their total ruin and annihilation. Their stubbornness, rather than a tactical, temporary surrender, was their tragic downfall.
Voltaire, during his exile in London, found himself surrounded by an angry anti-French mob who threatened his life. Instead of fighting or fleeing, he calmly addressed them. "Men of England, you wish to kill me because I am a Frenchman. Am I not punished enough in not being born an Englishman?" This unexpected humility and self-deprecating wit utterly disarmed the enraged crowd, who instead cheered him and escorted him safely away. He transformed a moment of extreme weakness into a triumph by surrendering to their nationalistic bride.
Japanese diplomacy in the mid-19th century provides a grander national example. Faced with overwhelming Western technological and military superiority, Minister Hara Masayoshi advocated concluding friendly alliances and openly copying foreigner strengths while secretly and diligently fostering national strength and modernization. This soft, permeable form of invasion allowed Japan to catch up and eventually surpass the West without violent resistance or direct confrontation. It was like an animal playing dead to save its hide, maintaining freedom internally while appearing to submit externally.
Let's talk about Law 23. Concentrate your forces. The judgment here is to rigorously conserve your forces and energies by keeping them intensely concentrated at their strongest point. You will gain far more by finding a rich mine and mining it deeper and more thoroughly than by flitting from one shallow mine to another. Intensity defeats extensity every single time.
The Rothschild family is the ultimate historical example of this law. The five brothers built their immense power and unprecedented wealth by intensely concentrating their efforts on banking. They arranged intermarriages among their children to keep the family wealth and business tightly controlled and kept its inner workings invisible to outsiders. While other powerful banking families collapsed during Europe's tumultuous times, the Rothschilds not only preserved but expanded their unprecedented wealth. As Brother Solomon famously said, "We are like the mechanism of a watch. Each part is essential, but only when working together as one concentrated unit."
The tragic inverse is the Renaissance painter Pontormo. His 11-year isolation in a chapel, while intensely focused on minute detail, led to a profound lack of overall composition and cohesion in his frescoes. He lost sight of the whole, becoming obsessed with individual parts, ultimately ruining his career. This contrasts sharply with the idea of concentrating forces effectively on the overall vision.
The great military strategist Karl von Clausewitz famously stated, "There is no higher and simpler law of strategy than that of keeping one's forces concentrated." In our modern world, plagued by constant distraction, multitasking, and diffusion of attention, the ability to concentrate one's mind and energy becomes an increasingly significant and rare source of power. It's the ability to focus ruthlessly on what truly matters.
On to Law 24. Play the perfect courtier. This law demands mastery of the intricate art of indirection, strategic flattery, and graceful assertion of power. You must learn to adapt fluidly to every situation, dissimulate your true feelings, and appear agreeable and charming while subtly manipulating others to your will.
The court of Louis XIV was the ultimate training ground for this. Everything literally revolved around the king. Courtiers competed fiercely to please him and gain his notice. Even an insignificant remark or a subtle nod from the king could elevate a courtier's prestige and power. The source notes that even though royal courts may have disappeared, the underlying dynamics and laws that govern court politics, the need to navigate power hierarchies, are timeless and persist in modern organizations.
In ancient China, ministers couldn't directly criticize the emperor as that was seen as treason. Instead, they cleverly inserted sightings of strange phenomena like geese flying backward or moons out of their orbit into court chronicles. This was a subtle, indirect way to warn the emperor that his actions were unbalancing the universe and needed to change without directly challenging his authority.
Jules Mansart, King Louis XIV's brilliant architect, used a particularly clever strategy. He would intentionally include minor, easily correctable flaws in his designs for Versailles, often in the gardens, which weren't his absolute specialty. The king would discover and correct them, leading Mansart to exclaim admiration and declare himself a lowly pupil in comparison to the king's genius. This cunningly ingratiated him with the king and secured him prestigious commissions.
Jean-Baptiste Isabey, the painter commissioned for the Congress of Vienna, faced a significant dilemma when both Talleyrand, the French negotiator, and the Duke of Wellington, the English negotiator, demanded center stage in his official painting. He ingeniously painted a scene where both were prominent, and the painting could be interpreted differently based on the viewer's perspective, satisfying both without offending either.
Fra Filippo Lippi, a Renaissance painter captured as a slave, found a way to apply this. He drew his owner's portrait with charcoal on a wall. His extraordinary skill amazed his owner, who not only freed him but employed him, eventually arranging his return to Italy. Showing extraordinary, unexpected talent, even in dire circumstances, can gain you immense favor and leverage.
Alfonso of Aragon, when a servant dreamt of receiving gifts, generously granted them. But when the servant later dreamt of receiving a bag of gold, Alfonso wisely said, "Don't believe in dreams from now on, they lie." This showed wisdom in not being exploited. The core principles of the perfect courtier, the source notes, include never criticizing superiors directly, being extremely frugal in asking favors, mastering your emotions, being able to cry or laugh on command, and fitting the general spirit of the times.
Next, Law 25. Recreate yourself. Do not passively accept the role society or circumstances give you. Forge a new identity for yourself that commands attention, incorporates dramatic devices, and seems larger than life. Be the deliberate master of your own image and narrative.
Ancient Roman advice for success vividly captures this. To truly succeed in Rome, one must be a chameleon, a Proteus, supple, flexible, inscrutable, able to wear masks, conceal intentions, and master one's countenance. It's about not taking your identity personally, but seeing it as a costume you can strategically put on and take off to fit the occasion.
Julius Caesar, an addict of the stage, understood this instinctively. On the brink of civil war, facing uncertain generals, he dramatically pointed to a soldier crossing the Rubicon River, declaring with profound theatricality, "Let us accept this as a sign from the gods. The die is cast." His theatrical pronouncement swayed his wavering generals to follow him into civil war. A more prosaic speech, devoid of such drama, would never have had the same electrifying effect.
Velasquez's masterpiece painting, Les Meninas, symbolically represents this idea of self-creation. The artist himself is positioned more prominently in the painting than the reflected king and queen. It symbolizes Velasquez's self-creation from a dependent artist into a powerful court figure who controlled the very image of the royal family.
Bertolt Brecht, the German playwright, famously demonstrated this before the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1947. Summoned for communist sympathies, he didn't attack the committee like other defiant witnesses. Instead, he carefully rehearsed ambiguous, funny responses, smoked a cigar, knowing a committee member liked them, and presented a staged production of himself that charmed the committee, leading to his quick release. He transformed a dangerous interrogation into a theatrical performance.
Other dramatic effects include the beau geste, a grand dramatic action performed at a climactic moment like Cleopatra's famous arrival in Rome, rolled in a carpet for Caesar, or George Washington's two flourish and fanfare exits, first as general, then as president, demonstrating the profound power of carefully planned dramatic gestures to leave a lasting impression.
Let's move to Law 26. Keep your hands clean. You must always strive to seem a paragon of civility and efficiency. Your hands should never appear soiled by mistakes, dirty deeds, or direct conflict. Maintain such a spotless appearance by cleverly using others as scapegoats and cat's paws, essentially. Someone uses a dupe or tool to do your dirty work to disguise your direct involvement.
Cao Cao, the Chinese warlord, faced a mutiny among his troops due to a severe lack of grain. Instead of taking responsibility, he cunningly blamed and executed his grain official, using him as a convenient scapegoat to deflect the army's anger and swiftly restore order. This is a classic example of deflecting blame and maintaining an unblemished reputation at others' expense.
Mao Zedong used scapegoats when his ambitious cultural revolution failed miserably and led to widespread chaos. Instead of offering apologies or taking responsibility himself, he offered up high-ranking party members, including his personal secretary, Chen Po, as the ones to blame.
Cardinal Richelieu, to punish a conspirator named Marillac without directly implicating the Queen Mother, subtly manipulated events. He couldn't directly touch Marillac without risking a political firestorm. Instead, he tried and executed Marillac's innocent brother on trumped-up charges, setting a terrifying example for future conspirators in the army, showing he would not shrink from sacrificing the innocent to protect his power and keep his own hands clean.
Cleopatra, while seemingly innocent and often acting through others, rose to sole power by letting various factions and rivals, like her brother Ptolemy III, commit murders and dirty deeds. She would then eliminate them, keeping her own hands clean throughout her ascent to absolute power.
An ancient fable of a crow and a snake beautifully illustrates this principle of indirect action. A crow hen, whose chicks were eaten by a snake in a banyan tree, cleverly dropped a golden chain into the tree's hollow trunk. This lured the king's eunuchs, who were pursuing the chain, to discover and kill the snake. The crow's hands remained clean, and her revenge was achieved through diversion.
Mao Zedong also used Chiang Kai-shek, the nationalist leader, as a cat's paw during the Japanese invasion. He shrewdly baited Chiang into doing the hard fighting against the Japanese, knowing it would decimate the nationalist conventional forces. This left them weakened for the later civil war against the communists. Mao thus achieved victory without soiling his hands directly against his internal enemy.
Okay, now, Law 27. Play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. People, the law argues, have an overwhelming and fundamental desire to believe in something, anything, beyond their mundane existence. Become the focal point of such desire by offering them a cause, a new faith, or an extraordinary vision to follow. Keep your words vague but full of promise. Emphasize enthusiasm and sensory experience over dry irrationality.
European charlatans of the 16th and 17th centuries, in a time of profound social transformation and declining organized religion, mastered this art. They initially peddled elixirs, but quickly realized that the larger the group they gathered around themselves, the easier it was to deceive. They shifted from simple cures to gathering cult-like followings, capitalizing on people's desperation for new beliefs and meaning.
Francesco Giuseppe Borri, a Milanese man in 1653, epitomized this. He claimed the Archangel Michael chose him as Capitano Generale of the army of the new pope, with the power to see souls and receive divine visions. He created an elaborate cult with 6 degrees, demanding strict vows of poverty and all possessions from his followers, promising them alchemical secrets for immense wealth. His entire cult was based on people's deep-seated need to believe in something miraculous.
Johann Friedrich Schuppach, known as the Mountain Doctor, created a cult of nature and healing. He offered unusual treatments like electric shock therapy and entertained patients with concerts and ballets in his fabulous establishment. He used sensory overload and art to entrance and captivate, overriding skepticism and cultivating profound belief in his abilities.
Franz Mesmer, after initial failures with individual patients, moved to Paris and created a magical world in his apartment with sensory overload, dim lights, strange music, flowing robes. He practiced his magnetism only on groups where one believer infecting the other quickly overwhelmed individual skeptics. The source points out that our tendency to doubt is often broken down when we join a group, and the warmth and infectiousness of the group's belief can overwhelm the skeptical individual.
Yeah, this law emphasizes creating devotion by focusing intensely on the visual and sensual over the purely intellectual. It also suggests inventing clear external enemies for followers to react against, which solidifies group cohesion, and even subtly exploiting repressed sexuality to create intense emotional bonds.
On to Law 28. Enter action with boldness. If you are unsure of a course of action, the law advises do not attempt it at all. Your doubts and hesitations will inevitably infect your execution, leading to failure. Timidity is dangerous. It's far better to enter any action with boldness and audacious confidence. Any mistakes you commit through audacity are easily corrected with more audacity. Everyone admires the bold, absolutely no one honors the timid.
Lola Montez's audacious entrance before King Ludwig of Bavaria is a perfect, almost theatrical example. To gain an audience with the reclusive king, she pushed past sentries, rushed into his chambers, and accidentally tore her dress, dramatically exposing her breasts. This bold, unexpected act immediately captured Ludwig's attention and secured her audience, leading to her immense influence over him. She seized the moment with pure nerve.
Count Victor Lustig, again, demonstrated pure, unadulterated audacity with his infamous Eiffel Tower scam. Impersonating a government official, he presented himself with overwhelming authority, provided official-looking documents, gave a guided tour, and boldly demanded 250,000 francs as a down payment for the sale of the Eiffel Tower. He completely overwhelmed his victim with his sheer audacity, making the absurd seem believable.
Aesop's timeless fable concisely advises, do boldly what you do at all. The source also suggests that timidity often loses hearts in matters of love, and women, it provocatively claims, often prefer a little rough handling to too much consideration, implying boldness is often more attractive than hesitation.
Now, for a clever reversal, timidity can sometimes be cleverly feigned as an offensive weapon. You lure people in with a convincing show of shyness or weakness, all the better to pounce on them boldly later, catching them completely off guard when they expect vulnerability.
All right, Law 29. Plan all the way to the end. The ending, the law asserts, is everything. Plan meticulously all the way to the very last consequence, taking into account all the possible obstacles, twists of fortune, and potential reversals that might undo your hard work and give the glory to others. By planning rigorously to the end, you will not be overwhelmed by unforeseen circumstances, and you will definitively know when to stop and when to press your advantage.
Balboa's fatal flaw after discovering the Pacific was his vague, incomplete plan. He had a grand dream of conquering the mythical El Dorado, but failed to keep the location of the Incas a secret while he returned to Spain to gather forces. His lack of foresight allowed Pedrarias' arrival to arrive, take over his conquest, and eventually execute him. Balboa went partway, leaving the door open for others to take over, a fatal error in planning.
Harry Houdini, the great escape artist, serves as the perfect example of meticulous planning. For his impossible possible acts, he spent weeks practicing intricate escapes like from manacles with 6 sets of locks. He planned every detail, even changing the code during a struggle to make his escape seem effortless and godlike to the audience, cleverly concealing the immense toil and foresight involved. His effortlessness was a product of precise planning.
Most people, the source notes, are instinctively ruled by the heart, not the head, and tend to improvise their way through life. They focus only on the happy ending rather than all the potential obstacles and dark turns along the way. But planning to the end provides clarity, eliminates crippling anxiety, and ensures your success is not left to chance.
The source uses the powerful image of the gods on Mount Olympus, who, looking down on human actions, see in advance the endings of all the great dreams that lead to disaster and tragedy. They laugh at our profound inability to see beyond the immediate moment. This kind of disciplined self-control, this ability to foresee consequences, makes one truly godlike.
That concept of apparent effortlessness ties directly into Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. You must cunningly conceal all the immense toil, meticulous practice, and clever tricks that truly go into your actions. Act effortlessly, as if you could do much more with ease, to appear naturally gifted, powerful, and almost divinely blessed.
Harry Houdini, once again, is the perfect example. His impossible possible escapes seemed utterly effortless to the audience, who saw none of the weeks of grueling practice, intricate planning, and physical pain involved. This carefully cultivated illusion made him appear a Superman, reinforcing his mystique and power.
Renaissance artists like Michelangelo understood this profound concept, which in art history is called sprezzatura, essentially, the art of making incredibly difficult things look utterly effortless, almost accidental. They carefully kept their works under wraps, forbidding even popes from seeing them in process. Only the finished masterpiece was unveiled, preserving the magic and atmosphere of ease and natural beauty.
Revealing your hard work makes you look weaker, as if anyone could do what you do with enough effort and time. Keeping it secret, however, allows you to maintain an aura of natural genius. It makes you seem to possess the grace and ease of a god, a figure to be admired and not easily imitated or surpassed.
Okay, Law 31. Control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal. The most effective deceptions, the law suggests, give the other person the subtle illusion of choice, all while you, the manipulator, completely control the available options, thereby leading them precisely where you want them to go.
Ninon de l'Enclos, the celebrated 17th century courtesan, famously devised a brilliant system for her many suitors. She created two distinct categories: payers, who paid for her company and intimacy on her terms, and martyrs, who enjoyed her company for free, hoping to become her favor. She never forced them, they chose their option, but both options served her needs, giving her immense control over her relationships and her resources.
Cardinal de Retz, a cunning 17th century provocateur, constantly struggled with the indecisive Duke of Orleans, who vacillated on every decision. Retz learned to frame issues to present only two options to the Duke, and both options inevitably led to the Duke's increased dependence on Retz's leadership and guidance, thereby subtly controlling the Duke's decisions without appearing to force them.
Ivan the Terrible, when he temporarily abandoned the throne, as we discussed back in Law 11, expertly forced the citizens to beg him to return. Only then did he agree, on the crucial condition of absolute unchecked power. By giving them the choice to invite him back or suffer chaos, he controlled the ultimate outcome and consolidated his power under the guise of their own volition.
The source notes that words like freedom, options, and choice evoke a powerful sense of possibility that often extends far beyond reality. People instinctively choose to believe the game is fair, even when you are subtly dealing all the cards.
Now, for a strategic reversal, limiting others' options can sometimes inadvertently limit your own. There are situations where allowing rivals a greater degree of freedom is actually advantageous. It creates invaluable opportunities to spy, gather information, and plan more effective long-term deceptions. The powerful banker James Rothschild believed this, feeling that trying to control opponents too much prevented him from observing their strategies and vulnerabilities.
Let's consider Law 32. Play to people's fantasies. The truth, the law laments, is often ugly, mundane, and unpleasant. Life is harsh, so people instinctively flock to those who can artfully manufacture romance, conjure compelling fantasy, or offer an escape from dreary reality. There is immense power in tapping into the fantasies of the masses.
Venice, in profound decline after losing Cyprus in the 16th century, yearned desperately for a quick reversal of fortune and a return to past glories. The mysterious Count Cagliostro, also known as Bragadino, arrived, funded luxuriously by the city, claiming to multiply gold with a secret substance. He masterfully played on the city's fantasy of restoring past glories through alchemy, despite his consistent failures and lavish lifestyle. The city's inhabitants, the source observes, inhabited a happy dream world he had created for them.
An ancient fable of a lioness's funeral beautifully illustrates this. A stag, seeing the grieving Lion King consumed by rage, cleverly told him a comforting fantasy that his queen was in the Elysian fields, happy, and wished him to cease his grief. This fantastic tale transformed the king's rage into belief and brought the stag a handsome gift. It teaches that flattering and telling fantastic lies can win immense favor because people prefer comforting illusions to harsh truth.
The law advises, never appeal to truth in reality unless you are absolutely prepared for the anger and profound disenchantment that comes when illusions are shattered. Instead, promise the moon a sudden magical transformation rather than gradual improvement through hard work. Fantasy, the source emphasizes, thrives against the backdrop of the mundane. Artists and intellectuals are often masters at this, communicating profound ideas through compelling metaphors and imagery, a skill which kings and leaders have historically valued.
Now for Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Everyone, the law asserts, has a weakness, an insecurity, an uncontrollable emotion, a deep-seated need, or a secret pleasure. Once you find this thumbscrew, this single point of leverage, you can turn it to your immense advantage, allowing you to manipulate them to your will.
The fable of the lion, the chamois, and the fox is a prime example of exploiting this. A fox, seeing a mighty lion frustrated by a chasm it couldn't cross, played on the lion's immense pride and vanity by saying, "What? With your strength and agility, is it possible that you will yield to a feeble chamois?" The lion's uncontrollable emotion, his wounded pride, led him to foolishly leap to his death, killed by his own vanity, meticulously manipulated by the fox.
Cardinal Richelieu, viewing everything as a military campaign, identified Marie de Medici's, the Queen Mother's, fundamental weakness as deep insecurity and an insatiable need for constant masculine attention and flattery. He exploited this by flattering her, gaining her favor. Then, understanding King Louis XIII's childishness and immaturity, he deliberately pushed the young king into immensely ambitious projects, like a crusade against the Huguenots and a war with Spain. This sheer immensity of undertaking made Louis even more dependent on Richelieu, who molded France for 18 years, exploiting both their weaknesses.
Count Victor Lustig, the con artist, identified as Mark Loller's deep need for respect from others and his desire for access to old wealth and status. Lustig shrewdly offered him friendship, a sense of elevated status, and a machine that would supposedly solve Loller's worries, exploiting Loller's insecurity and neediness. The source emphasizes that the insecure and the unhappy are often riddled with weaknesses and have profound needs that you can easily fill, making them vulnerable to manipulation.
The source pinpoints two main emotional voids to fill for leverage: insecurity and unhappiness. It also lists powerful, uncontrollable emotions like paranoid fear, lust, greed, vanity, and hatred. People caught in their grip often lose all control over themselves, allowing you to easily control them. When dealing with helpless children in positions of power who cannot make strong decisions themselves, you can cleverly push them into bold ventures so they become even more dependent on you as the mature, guiding adult figure.
Okay, let's discuss Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. The way you carry yourself, the law asserts, will profoundly determine how you are treated by others. In the long run, appearing vulgar or common will inevitably lead people to disrespect you. By acting regally, confident of your inherent powers, and maintaining an air of quiet dignity, you make yourself seem naturally destined to wear a crown.
King Louis Philippe of France provides a stark transgression of this law, leading directly to his downfall. He disliked ceremony, openly preferred bankers to nobility, and actively downplayed his royal status, walking the streets with a gray hat and umbrella like any common bourgeois. He even notoriously treated banker James Rothschild as an equal. This deliberate lack of regal dignity made him seem an imposter in the eyes of his people. When his throne was finally threatened, he caved in and was easily toppled by a popular uprising.
Contrast this with Christopher Columbus's audacious self-belief. A mere merchant with no navigation experience, Columbus demanded immense hereditary rights. Grand Admiral, Viceroy, 10% of commerce from the kings of Spain for his proposed westward voyage. His unwavering, almost delusional belief in his own greatness, despite a complete lack of traditional qualifications, eventually convinced Ferdinand and Isabella to back him. He acted like a king, and through sheer force of will was treated as one.
Hippocrates, a suitor in an ancient Greek tale hoping to marry the daughter of a powerful leader, disastrously danced on a table at a banquet which deeply offended his host. His display of undignified behavior cost him the bride and showed the crucial importance of acting appropriately, with an air of refined dignity, especially in high circles.
History, the source notes, is full of people of undistinguished birth figures like Theodora, Beethoven, Disraeli, who achieved immense greatness by believing so firmly in their own potential and destiny that it became a powerful, self-fulfilling prophecy. The trick, the law suggests, is to be utterly overcome by your self-belief, to act like a king before you are one, and you are far more likely to be treated as such.
Your actions and demeanor must emphasize your distance from others, reinforcing your unique status. Louis-Philippe fatally lacked this sense of dignified separation, making him vulnerable and eventually disposable. The crown may physically separate you, but you must make that separation real in the minds of others by consistently acting differently and with an unshakable sense of inherent dignity.
On to Law 35. Master the art of timing. Never, the law commands, be in a hurry. Learn to wait patiently, sensing the zeitgeist or the prevailing spirit and mood of the times, a subtle undercurrent that tells you when to act. You must then strike fiercely and decisively when the time is truly ripe, not a moment before or after.
Joseph Fouché, during the chaotic French Revolution, was an absolute master of timing. He constantly changed sides from moderate to radical, then accepting a provincial post, then leading conspiracies. He intuitively knew when to lie low and disappear, when to strike decisively, and even when to refuse help, like from Louis VIII, who he knew would ultimately lose. He survived countless regime changes and became a powerful minister through his impeccable timing. He recognized that power often sticks to those who bring a revolution to its conclusion, not necessarily those who start it.
The Roman general Sertorius deliberately allowed his overconfident, undisciplined barbarian allies to suffer a partial defeat against the enemy. This calculated setback made them more disposed to obey his orders and strategy in the future. It taught them the importance of timing and discipline through harsh, first-hand experience rather than through words.
Tokugawa Ieyasu of Japan also mastered the art of profound patience. He served his predecessor Hideyoshi, but when Hideyoshi staged a rash and ultimately disastrous invasion of Korea, Ieyasu wisely did not involve himself or his forces. He patiently waited for Hideyoshi's inevitable downfall and the power vacuum that would follow, then seized power with great artistry and precision when the time was truly ripe, ensuring lasting stability.
The benefits of waiting patiently are profound. An uncluttered mind, an inherent resistance to others' baits and provocations, greater flexibility for unexpected opportunities, and a more secure, unshakable foundation for your power. Success built slowly and surely, the source insists, is the only kind that truly lasts.
The inverse of good timing is exemplified by Woodrow Wilson's ill-fated punitive expedition against Pancho Villa in Mexico. The longer the expedition took without capturing Villa, the more it made the Americans seem incompetent and Villa clever and elusive. It turned a minor annoyance into a major international embarrassment for the U.S. Wilson's impatience magnified the problem, leaving Villa not only free but more popular and heroic than ever.
Okay, now, Law 36. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. By actively acknowledging a problem, a slight, or a petty enemy, you inadvertently give it existence, credibility, and importance. The less attention you pay to a petty enemy, the more profoundly you show your superiority and diminish their significance.
Henry VIII wanted a swift annulment from Catherine of Aragon, who had failed to produce a male heir. Instead of engaging in endless arguments or negotiations with her or the Pope, Henry simply and resolutely stopped acknowledging her as his lawful wife. He called her princess and moved to a separate bed. This contempt, this utter dismissal of her status, allowed him to bypass her resistance and papal authority, eventually leading to his marriage to Anne Boleyn. He simply erased her as a factor.
Louis XIV used this as a devastating weapon in his court. If he disliked someone or wished to diminish their influence, he would act as if he didn't see or hear them at all. He effectively erased them from his reality and maintained his superiority by simply cutting off all interaction. The ultimate snub.
The law observes that when a powerful entity pays undue attention to a puny enemy, it inadvertently elevates that enemy's stature and significance. Athens' long, drawn-out war with Syracuse and John F. Kennedy's failed Bay of Pigs invasion both tragically made their smaller adversaries into international heroes and symbols of resistance. Similarly, Henry Kissinger's volcanic rage over the Pentagon Papers leak in 1971 led to the formation of the infamous Plumbers Unit, which eventually spiraled into Watergate. His extreme overreaction transformed a minor leak into a major national scandal.
The sour grapes approach is a clever variant of this. If you genuinely can't have something, act as if you never wanted it in the first place. George Sand, the French novelist, was nominated to the prestigious Académie Française, but wisely acted completely uninterested when she saw she wouldn't win, thereby preserving her dignity and reputation.
Pietro Aretino, the Renaissance writer, was exposed for lying about his aristocratic lineage. He was actually a shoemaker's son. Instead of defensively trying to defend the lie, Aretino audaciously embraced his humble origins. He openly claimed it proved his immense greatness for rising to the top through sheer talent. He turned a perceived weakness into a strength by disdaining the criticism and the very idea of aristocratic birth.
Now, for a crucial reversal, while most small troubles vanish when ignored, some will actually grow and fester into major problems. The powerful princes of Renaissance Italy initially ignored Cesare Borgia at the start of his career, dismissively viewing him as merely a churchman. This allowed him to grow into a formidable and terrifying threat before they realized their mistake. Not all fish should be ignored at the bottom of the pond.
Let's dive into Law 77. Create compelling spectacles. Dazzle and distract your audience with grand gestures, striking visual symbols, and compelling shows to sway public opinion, build your image, and mask your true motives.
The Loon Doctor of 17th century Europe perfectly embodied this. To treat his patients, this elderly doctor would rub their afflicted parts and lift them to a window facing the moon, mumbling unintelligibly all the while. The source notes that the mere thought, idea, and symbol of the moon was enough for people to profoundly believe in the healing, even though the moon couldn't possibly be visible from both his and his wife's separate treatment rooms simultaneously. It was pure, captivating spectacle overriding rational thought.
Diane de Poitiers, who was considerably older than her lover Henri II of France, brilliantly maintained her enthrallment over him by focusing intensely on powerful symbols. She intertwined their initials, used black and white, her colors everywhere, and cleverly identified herself with the chaste Roman goddess Diana, which gave her an air of respectability and subtly symbolized her pure and virtuous relationship with the king.
Louis XIV famously created a powerful symbol of himself as the Sun King, positioning himself as the absolute center of the universe, radiating power and light, using a stylized, radiating sun as his emblem. This potent visual identity needed no explanation, immediately distinguished him, and conjured an undeniable aura of majesty and divine right. It communicated dozens of meanings in one simple, powerful image.
The visual is often far more impactful than any words. The Roman Emperor Constantine, initially a sun worshipper, famously saw a cross superimposed on the sun before a crucial battle. This led to his dramatic conversion and the eventual Christianization of the entire Roman Empire. All the preaching and logical arguments in the world couldn't have been as powerful as that single, compelling visual symbol.
Cardinal de Retz, during a rebellion against the French crown known as the Fronde, masterfully took the disparaging term frondeurs, meaning slingshots, used by loyalists to mock the rebels, and brilliantly turned it into the rebels' own powerful rallying symbol. They then proudly wore slingshot sashes, uniting them and transforming a derogatory term into a potent visual force.
Okay, moving to Law 38. Think as you like, but behave like others. Flaunting unconventional ideas or unorthodox ways of life, the law warns, makes people think you want attention, that you look down on them, and that you pose a threat to their established norms. It's far safer and more effective to blend in, nurturing the common touch. Share your true originality and radical thoughts only with the select few, very tolerant friends.
The Spartan general Pausanias, despite his noble birth and military achievements, made a fatal error. He continued to dress in lavish Persian style even after returning to Sparta, and brazenly erected monuments in his own name. This flaunting of foreign customs and blatant personal glory led to him being declared a public enemy, showing how quickly unconventional behavior and disregard for local norms can backfire in conservative circles.
The philosopher Campanella, imprisoned for heresy in the 17th century, feigned madness to escape execution. His inquisitors, believing his unconventional, radical ideas stemmed from mental unsoundness rather than genuine heresy, commuted his sentence to life in prison. He continued to write his dangerous thoughts, but indirectly, showing that it's better to conceal your true, provocative thoughts if they go against the grain of the times.
Bertolt Brecht, a communist sympathizer, was summoned before the intimidating House Un-American Activities Committee, as we discussed earlier. Instead of belligerence or defiance, he behaved like others, by wearing a conservative suit, smoking a cigar, knowing a committee member liked them, and giving ambiguous, charming answers. This charmed the committee into letting him go. He wisely avoided directly challenging them or flaunting his radical views.
Talleyrand's composure is legendary and a testament to this law. During Napoleon's abusive public tirade against him, Talleyrand remained completely unflustered, later calmly remarking, "What a pity, gentlemen, that so great a man should have such bad manners." His calm exterior contrasted sharply with Napoleon's explosive outburst, showing his absolute mastery of decorum and the power of blending in outwardly while holding your own thoughts and judgment. The source aptly notes, "He lives well who conceals himself well. Be like coffers with double bottoms, showing only what's absolutely necessary."
Okay, let's discuss Law 39. Stir up waters to catch fish.
Anger and uncontrolled emotion, the law asserts, are strategically counterproductive for you, the power player, but they can be used with devastating effect to disrupt and confuse your opponents. Stir the waters, provoke them, to force them to the surface, getting them to act impulsively before they are truly ready. Haile Selassie masterfully applied this against Ras Gugsa, a powerful rival who was plotting revenge against him. Selassie deliberately goaded Gugsa into a premature rebellion by ordering him to fight a tribe Gugsa had no quarrel with, knowing it would provoke his sense of honor and pride. Gugsa, angered, foolishly marched an army toward the capital, but Selassie had planned ahead and crushed his forces, eliminating a powerful enemy by making him act prematurely and emotionally.
This tactic directly plays on uncontrollable emotions like pride, vanity, love, or hatred. The angrier your opponents become, the less control they have over themselves, their actions, and their strategic thinking, making them far easier to manipulate and defeat. Emotion blinds and the stirred waters obscure.
Harry Houdini, again, when challenged by a less successful rival escape artist named Clapini, used this. Houdini allowed Clapini to steal the combination for a pair of handcuffs he was using. This apparent weakness deliberately goaded Clapini into a public challenge, which Houdini, having cleverly changed the code, easily won, making Clapini look foolish and reinforcing Houdini's own misspeak. He stirred the waters of Clapini's ambition.
Now, for a crucial reversal, be careful when playing with emotions and stirring the waters. Some fish are best left at the bottom of the pond. The leaders of the ancient city of Tyre, confident in their formidable defenses, arrogantly refused Alexander the Great's initial offer for passage. This enraged him and led to a 4-month siege and their eventual total destruction. Not all fish should be stirred. Some are best left undisturbed in their deaths.
Okay, Law 40. Despise the free lunch. What is offered for free, the law cautions, is inherently dangerous. It almost always involves a hidden trick, a secret obligation, or subtle binding. What genuinely has worth is worth paying for. Pay your own way to avoid gratitude, guilt, and deceit. Be lavish with money to buy influence, not just things, but true loyalty and favors.
Kung Yi-Siu, the premier of Lu, was famously fond de foch. People often offered him fish as gifts, but he consistently refused. He explained that by accepting, he would be obligated and might have to bend the law or compromise his principles. This would risk his position and his ability to buy his own fish freely in the future. He prioritized independence and long-term supply over a fleeting free gift, recognizing the strings attached.
The masters of power throughout history, Caesars, Queen Elizabeths, Michelangelos, were never misers. Even master con artists spend freely and lavishly. Money, the source states, is far more than just currency. It is psychologically charged, a powerful vessel for politeness, sociability, and influence. Those who are cold, ruthlessly calculating, and only see numbers, the greedy fish, become blind to human psychology, making them incredibly easy targets for con artists lured by the promise of easy money.
Pietro Aretino, a Renaissance writer initially without fortune, cleverly reversed the dynamic of patronage. He gave lavish, expensive gifts to powerful patrons, making them indebted to him. This ladder of influence allowed him to have many patrons without ever bowing to any, giving him power comparable to a great lord simply by strategically spending.
Baron de Rothschild, to overcome the barrier his immense wealth created with the French aristocracy, strategically wasted huge sums in lavish displays, mirroring the Native American potlatch. In these ceremonies, wealth destruction symbolized power and confidence. Rothschild showed he valued French culture and influence over mere money, displaying a confidence and power that would ultimately restore his wealth many times over.
The Medicis in Renaissance Florence, whose power came from their banking fortune, kept a deliberately low profile, not flaunting their immense wealth, to avoid going against Florence's democratic values. They understood that an overt free lunch of ostentatious display would create resentment.
The antique dealer Fushimiya once scrutinized an ordinary teacup for minutes, then bought it for a small sum. Later, he gave it for free to a local artisan who thought it valuable. Fushimiya explained it was ordinary, but used the act of giving it for free to impress without the cup truly being valuable, playing on perception and generosity.
Akimoto Suzutomo, a wealthy tea ceremony adherent, chastise his page for bargaining down the price of a tea bowl from 100 to 95 gold pieces. Suzutomo explained that such an heirloom was sold out of family desperation. Offering less showed disregard for their feelings, making the object seem mean and cheapening its value. Money spent well on sentiment and respect truly makes things valuable.
The ultimate lesson here. Bait deceptions with the possibility of easy money. People are fundamentally lazy and want wealth to fall into their laps without effort. Con artists exploit this greed by selling advice on making millions for a small sum, exploiting this human tendency, which effectively blinds victims to deception.
Next, Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. Create your own distinctive identity and your own kingdom. Do not be burdened, the law warns, by the overwhelming accomplishments of your predecessor, or you will inevitably be overshadowed and found lacking.
Louis V's failure starkly illustrates this. Following the grand, powerful Louis XIV, Louis V squandered his inheritance, lacking his grandfather's driving force. Versailles, under him, became a pleasure palace of incomparable banality, symbolizing everything the oppressed peasantry hated, leading to its destruction in the Revolution. He lacked the necessity and the vision that had driven his predecessor to fill a power vacuum.
Alexander the Great, by contrast, passionately defied his father Philip II, a great conqueror in his own right. Alexander surpassed him by setting his own monumental goals, conquering Persia, which Philip only dreamed of. He performed powerful symbolic acts like cutting the Gordian knot, demonstrating that he would blaze his own path and not be burdened by his father's legacy. He carved out his unique identity.
The source material suggests that sons of successful men often fail precisely because they lack the desperate urge and struggle that drove their fathers to greatness. Furthermore, fathers themselves often subconsciously envy their sons and try to control them, effectively forcing them into their own shoes, hindering their independent growth.
If you cannot materially renounce an inheritance, at least begin psychologically from ground zero. Shed the immense weight of the past and your predecessor's achievements, and instead, ruthlessly chart a completely new direction. Be merciless with the past, not only with your father, but with your own earlier achievements, constantly reinventing yourself.
Okay, let's consider Law 42. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. This law advises you to identify the single source of trouble, the strong individual or leader who holds a group together, be it a rebellious faction or a rival organization. Neutralize their influence by isolating or banishing them, and the group will inevitably disperse and fall apart.
Pope Boniface VIII, plotting to take over Florence, identified Dante Alighieri as the powerful orator and ardent supporter who held the city's white faction together through his charisma and influence. Boniface lured Dante away to Rome on a pretext, then, once he was out of the city, condemned him to death if he ever returned to Florence. Without Dante, the backbone of the city, the whites scattered and the rival blacks swiftly took over.
Pizarro's capture of the Incan king Atahualpa instantly caused the charm that might have held the Peruvians together to dissolve. It led to the rapid collapse of the entire empire as every man thought only of his own safety. This highlights the crucial role of a single, unifying leader in maintaining group cohesion.
An ancient Chinese proverb brilliantly captures this principle. One resolute person, one disobedient spirit can turn a flock of sheep into a den of lions. The key, then, is to isolate the singular troublemaker, to decapitate the snake, and the group will quickly scatter without their driving force.
On to Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. Coercion, the law teaches, inevitably creates resistance and resentment. Instead, seduce others into wanting to move in your direction willingly. Do this by operating on their individual psychologies and weaknesses, softening them by subtly working on their emotions, not just their reason.
In ancient China, the brilliant strategist Zhuge Liang faced a rebellion by King Mengwo. Liang, rather than using brute force, repeatedly captured and released Mengwo and his entire army, showering them with food and wine each time. His goal, he declared, was to win hearts rather than simply conquer cities. After 7 captures and releases, Mengwo finally bowed to Liang's undeniable superiority, bringing lasting peace to the region without further bloodshed.
T. Lawrence, during World War I, had a profound epiphany. He realized that conventional warfare made soldiers lifeless pawns, blindly following orders. He aimed instead to conquer every soldier's mind, believing that a committed, psychologically motivated soldier would fight harder and more creatively than any coerced army. This was about inspiring internal desire and loyalty, not just external force.
The quickest and most effective way to secure people's minds is to demonstrate, simply and clearly, how an action will profoundly benefit them. Self-interest, the source argues, is the strongest and most reliable motive. Noble causes often work best when they cunningly cover a blatant appeal to self-interest, allowing people to feel good while acting on their own behalf.
The source points out the historical importance of artists and intellectuals in this regard. Kings throughout history, like Frederick the Great with Voltaire, consistently kept writers and intellectuals who possessed the unique ability to appeal to people's minds through powerful metaphor and compelling imagery. Alienating these shapers of thought can be incredibly dangerous.
Okay, now for Law 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. Mirroring your enemy's actions or psyches, the law explains, can profoundly confuse them, make them overreact impulsively, or even seduces them with the illusion of shared values. It's a versatile tool for deception, teaching powerful lessons, and throwing opponents off balance.
Alcibiades, the charismatic Athenian statesman, used this as a core part of his profound charm. He would instinctively sense others' moods and tastes, then tailor his words and actions to subtly mirror their inmost desires and values. He seduced them with the powerful idea that their values were superior and that he was simply a reflection of their own greatness.
Marie Mancini, Louis XIV's mistress, deliberately created a psychological mirror for Louis, reflecting his hidden yearnings, his high ideals, his romantic nature, his desire for greatness, back to him. This made him feel godlike and exclusively focused on her. He made him feel seen and understood. She actively helped fashion his sun-king image, making him believe he was reflecting his best self through her.
Ivan the Terrible used this mirror effect to powerfully show his defiant boyars their own ridiculousness. This was after his abdication stunt from Law 11, where they resisted his return. Ivan publicly crowned a Tartar as the Tsar of Moscow, forcing the boyars to bow to him. This mirrored their own disloyalty by having them bow to an outsider, an exaggerated, humiliating reflection of their previous actions.
Dr. Milton H. Erickson, the renowned psychotherapist, used analogies and symbolic mirrors to indirectly educate and guide patients, cleverly bypassing their conscious resistance. For couples with sexual problems, for instance, he would discuss analogous situations, like a lonely tree battered by winds, allowing them to realize truths on their own, similar to Christ's parables. He suggests not being afraid to exaggerate the mirrored behavior to make opponents clearly see the absurdity of their own actions.
When dealing with people lost in their own elaborate fantasy worlds, the advice is not to shatter their mirrors directly. Instead, you must enter their world, understand their illusions, and then gently guide them from within that world, using their own logic against them.
Now, for a crucial reversal, be extremely wary of mirrored situations. Situations that closely resemble previous ones, especially if negative associations are tied to that mirror. Richard Wagner, Ludwig II's favorite composer, tragically fell from grace because he inadvertently put himself in the reflection of the king's previous scandalous mistress, Lola Montez. Everything Wagner did, even innocently, reminded Bavarians of her, and he had no control over those damaging reflections.
Our next law is Law 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. While people generally understand the abstract need for change and improvement, they are profoundly upset by changes that directly affect them personally, their routines, and their comfort. Make changes seem far less innovative than they actually are by honoring the past and cleverly cloaking reforms in the comforting garb of tradition.
Thomas Cromwell, during Henry VIII's reign, pushed through incredibly radical Protestant reforms too quickly. He demolished churches, smashed religious images, and levied high taxes to seize church wealth. This extreme, rapid change, though aligned with the king's desires, caused widespread terror, social unrest, and powerful revolts, eventually leading directly to Cromwell's downfall when Henry realized the immense costs and instability it created.
The Roman Republic, when transforming its monarchy into a republic, wisely retained numerous traditional elements to ease the transition. For example, they kept the number of lictors, 12, serving the consuls who replaced the king. They even appointed a king of the sacrifice to perform annual religious rituals. These symbolic gestures satisfied the people and prevented clamoring for the monarchy's return, making the radical change feel less disruptive and more familiar.
Human psychology inherently desires abstract or superficial change, but deep-seated habits and routines are profoundly disturbing to alter. The source emphasizes paying close attention to the zeitgeist. If your reform is too far ahead of its time, it will inevitably stir up anxiety and powerful opposition. Changes must appear less innovative than they actually are. England's conversion to Protestantism, for instance, took over a century of gradual, incremental evolution.
Okay, Law 46. Never appear too perfect. Appearing utterly flawless, the law warns, is inherently dangerous as it inevitably creates envy and silent lurking enemies. It is far smarter to occasionally display harmless defects or humbly admit to minor vices to cunningly deflect that envy and seem more human, approachable, and relatable. Only gods and the dead can seem perfect with absolute impunity.
The tragic story of playwright Joe Orton and Kenneth Halliwell perfectly illustrates this. Orton's meteoric success, his natural talent and buoyant charm, when displayed too perfectly, led to the agonizing deterioration of his older, less talented lover, Kenneth Halliwell. Halliwell became consumed by a fatal envy, which ultimately led to him murdering Orton. Envy, the source describes, is a tormented creature, gnawing not only at others, but at itself.
Aeschylus profoundly noted that not many men can love a friend whose fortune prospers without feeling envy. Consider the biblical Joseph and his coat of many colors. His father loved him more and made him a beautiful, distinctive coat, which caused his brothers to envy him so much they conspired to slay him. Sir Walter Raleigh's natural talent, grace, and charm, while admirable, elicited the worst kind of envy because they are qualities no one can acquire through effort, making him many powerful enemies.
Envy is often subtle and insidious, hidden in seemingly benign criticisms, sarcastic remarks, excessive praise that feels backhanded, or resentful looks. The problem arises when it's not recognized and addressed until it's far too late, and the damage is irreparable.
For a fascinating reversal, once envy is already present and undeniable, sometimes displaying the utmost disdain for the envious by flagrantly flaunting perfection and new triumphs can be the best revenge. Michelangelo, forced by the envious Bramante to paint the Sistine Chapel, used Bramante's obvious envy as fuel for his most perfect and monumental work, intentionally tormenting Bramante with his unparalleled genius.
Let's consider Law 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop. The moment of victory, the law teaches, is often the most dangerous and treacherous. Pushing too far, trying to conquer too much, or becoming overconfident and hubristic can lead to the creation of new enemies and ultimately your own downfall.
Cyrus the Great's hubris is a classic example. After conquering vast empires and proudly declaring himself king of the world, Cyrus, believing himself superhuman, audaciously attacked the relatively poor Massagetai, arrogantly ignoring Queen Tamiris' stern warning. This profound overreach led directly to his army's devastating defeat and his own death. Victory fever had blinded him to the dangers of overextending his power.
An ancient fable tells of a victorious cockerel who, after winning a fight, crowed triumphantly from the very top of a barn, flaunting his strength to all. He was swiftly killed by an eagle. It illustrates the profound danger of over-proclaiming victory and attracting unnecessary attention at your most vulnerable moment.
Madame de Pompadour, Louis XV's influential mistress, famously knew when to stop pushing her bedroom influence and instead made herself indispensable for her political acumen and calming effect on the king. When her role in the disastrous 7 Years' War drew widespread criticism, she slowly and strategically withdrew from public affairs, thereby prolonging her influence rather than overreaching and facing a complete fall from grace.
Sparta, after decisively defeating Athens in the Peloponnesian War, became rigid, static, and resistant to change, losing its mobility and culture. Fearing any shift that might upset their hard-won dominance, their victory ultimately led to a static existence. They were unable to adapt to a changing world, becoming its own downfall. Those who shrewdly prepare for the inevitable fall, the wheel of fortune turning, are far less likely to be ruined. Preaching moderation can sometimes seem weak, so a strategic balance of confidence and restraint is needed.
And finally, Law 48. Assume formlessness. Be adaptable, fluid, and ever-changing. Avoid fixed forms, predictable patterns, or rigid plans at all costs, as this makes you elusive, hard to grasp, and allows you to catch opponents completely off guard.
Mao Zedong's guerrilla warfare epitomizes this law. His communist army meticulously avoided fixed positions, moving like Mercury, elusive and formless. They deliberately let the nationalists occupy cities, then surrounded them, breaking their conventional forces into small, isolated units. This go-game Weishi strategy, which contrasts with chess focusing on mobility and surrounding rather than direct engagement, was nonlinear and fluid, leading to paralysis and eventual collapse for the nationalists.
General Rommel, the German general known as the Desert Fox, shunned military formalism. He made no fixed plans beyond initial clashes, constantly tailoring his tactics to the fluid situations on the ground and often disregarding orders when necessary. This profound adaptability and unpredictability led to rapid conquests in North Africa.
The source contrasts the game of Go, Weiqi, with chess. Chess is linear and about direct killing of pieces. Go, however, emphasizes mobility, sacrificing areas to dominate the board and aiming for paralysis and collapse rather than direct engagement. Humans constantly create forms for emotions and communication, and rigid adherence to these forms can become a profound weakness, making you predictable and vulnerable.
For a crucial reversal, while formlessness is excellent for scattering enemy forces, when you finally engage, you must hit them with a powerful, concentrated blow. Mao used this by overwhelming the isolated nationalist units with strong, focused attacks, showing that concentration is still absolutely key at the point of engagement. Formlessness leads to the decisive, concentrated strike.
So we've unpacked all 48 laws, delving into their core meanings and the compelling, often surprising historical backstories and applications that illustrate them. And as you can clearly see, Greene's core philosophy is often seen as, well, Machiavellian, amoral, cynical, promoting ruthless manipulation and deception.
Right. Laws like never put too much trust in friends, crush your enemy totally, and never appear too perfect are frequently cited as ethically problematic from a, let's say, conventional moral standpoint. They certainly challenge typical notions of integrity, empathy, and collaborative influence in leadership.
hmm While conventional leadership often promotes transparent communication and building genuine trust, Greene's world is presented as this zero-sum game of constant power struggle. A world where niceties are often just a facade, and self-interest reigns supreme. However, there are surprising points of agreement, such as the undeniable importance of reputation and the non-negotiable need to adapt to changing circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. The historical examples Green uses largely support the laws they illustrate, though it's always important to remember that any historical narrative involves a degree of selectivity to make its point, right? The nuances of history are vast, but the patterns Green highlights are, well, undeniably present across centuries and cultures.
Definitely. This deep dive has offered you a unique, powerful lens through which to view power dynamics, extracted directly from Greene's influential work. We've seen how historical figures, through conscious or unconscious application of these laws, rose to incredible heights of influence and sometimes suffered spectacular downfalls when they misapplied them.
Understanding these dynamics, even if you choose not to apply them yourself, provides invaluable insight into human nature. It helps you navigate the complex social and professional environments you encounter every day, allowing you to see beyond the surface. It's truly about being informed, not necessarily endorsing the methods.
Exactly. So as you reflect on these laws, consider how much of what you observe in the world around you, in leadership, in social circles, even in personal interactions, might actually be governed by these unspoken, often ruthless rules. And what does that mean for how you choose to engage with the pursuit of influence and control in your own life?